So this project started life a couple of years ago in Sicily. It's based in Palermo and it's a meditation on Visconti's The Leopard, but set in modern day. So we know the story about Visconti. It's about the decline of the aristocratic classes, and in this moment in time in Sicily, it's really about really the kind of new kind of emigres, new people from Africa coming into Europe. And so essentially Western Union Small Boats is really about these two journeys. One's a cinematic journey into the history of Italian cinema, and then the other journey is really people coming from Northern Africa and Africa to this part of Europe.
In your work, you always have these dual narratives happening, and you work often with the same people, the same models, performers in your work. We talk a little bit about how they've transmutated their journeys they've taken with your work, because that's very interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, Western Union Small Boats is actually part of a trilogy of works. True North I made in 2004, which had Vanessa Mairi in it, who was also in Phantom Afrique in 2005, and this piece in 2007. We see her in it. And so in a way, she's also like a trans-textual character, you know, jumping from one location, one film into another film, embodying different characters, but she's the same person. And so you get to, you know, achieve this kind of familiarity with her presence in the works. And basically this work is really about that whole question of journeying and kind of multiple perspectives, and the two kind of journeys in this piece is really about this relationship both to time and to memory, but also to this physical movement that's taking place at the moment all over the world of people moving from one location to another.
I wanted to talk a little bit about film because, of course, you come from a filmmaking background and now you're very much in the art world. And I wanted to talk about that transposition as well, because that's a very important journey as well in terms of the medium, in terms of the changes in what was called video art, film art, and how much that's progressed in the last 10 years and changed. And you've been at the forefront of those changes.
Well, I think one of the exciting things about being me is that because I transmuted from the film world into the art world at a very particular moment of a technological revolution, computerization, digitalization became part of the language really of multi-projection and large-scale projection, which had a very close relationship to cinema, and I've been able to utilize that and to expand on it. And I think one of the exciting things in this whole area of contemporary art is really the people working in it, people like Doug Aiken, Pippi Lottie-Riss, for example, her fantastic new piece at MoMA. They're all about the ways in which artists are really utilizing the technology for creating a new experience of moving images, not in the cinema, but in the gallery. And I think that new language has really been at the cutting edge of really finding a new vocabulary for how we might experience looking at moving images in this new context, which is the museum or gallery rather than the cinema.
I also wanted to talk about the relationship with your work and architecture. That's very important for you, the way the screens work in different spaces, sometimes at angles, as they are here, two screens at angles and then one frontal screen. And the whole way that the space is terribly important, how we as viewers move around and have a relationship with the space.
Yes, I think one of the things that's really very different and distinguishes really people making work in this context as opposed to film context is that you have to think about the architecture. Architecture really becomes part of the language of installing the work and the way that people experience the work. And so for me, of course, the reason why I make these works in this context is also to think about the sculpture dimension. So the placement of the screens, how they work in relationship to the space, and how you can reconfigure that space, which is really posing really exciting possibilities for thinking about those kinds of questions in a way that cinema, in a more traditional classical sense, doesn't really offer up. And so I think that's been one of the most exciting developments in video art at this particular moment.
Can we just take you back for a few moments to the conception of this trilogy, because your work, as we've said, deals with certain ideas, certain historical perspectives very much in your work. You love often filming in museums that have a very historic resonance and relate back to all kinds of past ideas and agendas, political agendas, etc. So I wondered if we could just talk a little bit about how you conceived of the trilogy in the beginning.
Well, really, this trilogy is really, it has a name, it's called the Expeditions Trilogy, and it's really about the movements of people, and also it's about the movements of characters from one location to another. So it's very much about globalization and the ways in which bodies are moving through spaces. And in some instances, for example, in Western Union small boats, it's really about the way that certain bodies can't move that easily from one location to another. But also kind of in the work, it's been about different geographical and geological and ecological exploration. So True North was shot in Iceland. It was meant to be in the North Pole. So the melting of ice becomes a real symbolic meaning in that work and resonates in another sort of way. Phantom Afrique, which is shot in Burkina Faso, is really about the equatorial and sort of demands that are being made in this region in a climatical sense, but also it's a centre for cinema in a francophone culture. And then in this piece, Western Union Small Boats, it's really revisiting cinema, but also revisiting art history, because we return to really the site really of very kind of traditional Baroque spaces, and really it's a conversation about that architecture and how also it might be repositioned for talking about these new journeys.